Can you hold still for 1 second? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scales 13. In today's video, me and Phoenix here, my Pueblan milksnake, are going to show you guys how to care for a Pueblan milksnake properly. We're going to go over everything from enclosure size to heating to food and bedding for these wonderful creatures. Alright guys, so let's start off with the enclosure size. So for a baby to juvenile Pueblan milksnake, you want an enclosure that's at least the size of a 20-gallon enclosure. That way it's long enough for the animal to be able to thermoregulate properly and have plenty of room to grow and stretch out. Now as your Pueblan milksnake gets older, a fully grown Pueblan milksnake should be in an enclosure that is at the very least, the same dimensions as a 40 breeder aquarium, which is about 36 inches long, and I believe that's 24 inches wide and 24 inches tall. Now, the enclosure doesn't necessarily need to be made out of glass. It could also be made out of wood and PVC. But keep in mind, you can also go bigger for your Pueblan milksnake. Some people even keep Pueblan milksnakes in enclosures as big as a standard 4x2x2 enclosure, giving them a large amount of space and plenty of room to roam around and climb. And the bigger that you go, that's actually better for the animal, but for the keeper as well, because the animal will have more room to explore and act out more of its more naturalistic behavior. And for the keeper, that's even better for us because we're able to observe the animal doing even more in its environment because we'll have more room to run around. Now, Pueblan milksnakes being from central and southern Mexico, these guys can be found in a wide variety of different places. You can find these guys in forests, you can find these guys in grasslands, and the thing is, these guys are a burrowing species. So you want a substrate that not only is easy for the animal to burrow in, but you also want one that's not going to hold a ton of moisture, because these guys tend to do well in an environment in mid to low humidity. You don't want these guys to be in a high humidity environment just because it's not good for the respiratory system, at least not for a long period of time. We got a nice little present here for my Pueblan milksnake. Whoa, now this is a nice shed. Yeah, we're gonna pause the info for a second, guys. I actually found a really nice shed. Oh yeah, this one's nice. This one's going on the Instagram. With that being said, these guys can be found in a multitude of different environments. So the way I set up my enclosure is I decided to have different microclimates for my Pueblan milksnake in order to make sure this animal has different areas to go to, not only for thermal regulation, but also for humidity and to help out with the animal shedding. Here is her warm hide that's on the right side of the enclosure. This hide actually has a heat pad hooked up right under it. I think she's in there right now, so I'm not gonna stick my finger in like a worm or do something goofy. And what I do is I crank up my Pueblan milksnake's temperature to about 90 degrees on the thermostat. So what that does is this allows this animal to have a nice warm place in order to heat up its body and digest its food properly in this small enclosed space. Now the rest of the enclosure that is covered with aspen is the area where you'll find low to mid humidity. I don't want to keep the aspen wet, not only because aspen molds easily, but because this animal doesn't necessarily thrive in an environment that's high humidity all the time. So what I do to help out my Pueblan milksnake as far as its hydration and its shedding is on this side over here, I keep it, oh wow, it looks like she ran through here when she was shedding. There's a little bit of dead skin in here, guys. All right, so what I keep right here is this little dinosaur egg looking hide thing. And what I do is I fill this up with sphagnum moss. So what I tend to do to watch out for shedding is I make sure that my Pueblan milksnake's eyes aren't becoming that bluish, milky, opaque color that they have right before they shed. The moment I notice that, I'll go to this microclimate here and I'll make sure that this moss inside is nice and moist, so that way when it's time for her to shed, she can crawl right in this egg hide and she can sit in here and absorb all that nice humidity, and it'll actually help the shed skin that we have here come off nice and easily. As you can see when you look at this shed here, the Pueblan milksnake had a very easy shed. It's all in one piece. You don't see it all ripped up, even down to the tip of the tail. And this is the type of shed that you want to see from a healthy Pueblan milksnake. Around the water bowl and around the humid hide, I actually decided to use cypress mulch right here. Now, the reason that I'm using cypress mulch here is because when water gets on the cypress mulch, it's not going to mold like it will with the aspen. So I just keep the two separated right now, so that way when it wants to come over to this microclimate where it can hydrate itself and have a nice humid box where it can shed properly, it can hang out over here. But as soon as the animal wants to escape that humidity and dry off, it can come right over here underneath this fake fern, or it can even heat up its body and go over here to this warm hide, whether it's on top or below, just to find a nice dry refuge to get away from the moisture. At night, sometimes she'll just hang out right here where it's nice and warm, but at the same time, she's not overheating herself when there's no need for all that excess heat. Some other beddings that people tend to use for Pueblan milksnakes are things like shredded paper, beech chips, and different types of bark such as reptile bark. Now, the only reason that I'm not too keen on using reptile bark or even using cypress mulch in the entire enclosure is because some sources say that these animals can actually get sick from the tannins that are in these woods if they're constantly exposed and can't escape from it. That's something that I'm leaving up to more research on my own for myself. But at the same time, I'm trying to be cautious with my animal because I want to make sure that she's safe. So that's why I'm using this aspen right now. But I am open to trying beech chips because I did hear that it had a lot less dust than your typical reptile aspen that you'll buy. So I'm going to check that out soon, and I'm just going to see if it's also a good option to use. Let's get down to the temperatures. So like I said before, I keep my thermostat at around 90 degrees for my Pueblan milksnake. Let me pull that over here for you guys to see it. There we go, it's at 91 right now. Okay, so this area stays about 90 degrees. This side of the enclosure stays around the low to mid 80s. Let's hope this thing doesn't make a liar out of me. Yep, there we go, 80 degrees on the dot. This side of the enclosure here dips down from the mid to the low 70s right over here. I don't allow this enclosure to get any colder than 70 degrees because those are the temperatures that can actually be dangerous for a reptile, and that's where the animal could actually get sick. And keep in mind, this is a Pueblan milksnake, not one of the North American variety of milksnakes, so it's not really from a temperate climate. Since it's from Central and South Mexico, this animal actually needs to be in a much warmer climate and can't really tolerate those low temperature ranges that we get up here in the more northern parts of the Americas. Things that you can use to heat up your Pueblan milksake's enclosure, besides just using your standard heat pad with a thermostat that most people use for snakes, you can also use CHEs, which I'm actually using right now for both of my leopard geckos. And I watched a couple videos and did a little research on CHEs, and I might actually make a change again. I might change my primary heating source from the heat pad to a CHE with a thermostat instead in the near future. Another big question is on the lighting of the Pueblan milksnake, and that is whether or not these beautiful creatures actually need UVB. And in my personal experience, since I'm feeding this animal whole prey rodents and it's absorbing the calcium and everything it needs, as far as its bone structure, as of right now, my standpoint is that these animals don't necessarily need UVB in order to survive. They don't crash and burn like other animals do without it, but that's survival. In order for the animal to thrive, however, I do believe that since this is a crepuscular animal and not an animal that comes out literally in the dead of night after the sun is set, I believe that these animals do require UVB if that is what is being given to it in the wild. Now guys, you know what that means. You're looking at my enclosure right now and you're like, wait, all you have is a heat pad and a thermostat and no lights. So in the future, and there she goes. See if I can get her to come out. My current plans for the future is to hook this guy up with a nice UVB system for the future. I believe these guys can do well with just a simple shade dweller bulb, since these guys are crepuscular and they're also a burrowing species, which means they're not going to be laying out on rocks, basking, stuff like that all the time. But that's something I'm definitely open to in the future, just to make sure that my Pueblan milksnake has everything it needs in order to live a happy, healthy, thriving life. All right, guys, so now we're gonna get on to Phoenix's favorite part of our lesson today, which is food. Now, for a Pueblan milksnake, these guys in the wild will eat rodents, small lizards, and since Pueblan milksnakes are in the group of snakes known as king snakes, they will feed on other snakes. With that being said, cohabitation should definitely not be done with a pair of Pueblan milksnakes unless you're an experienced keeper. For those of us that are just simple keepers who just want to have the animal as a pet, I suggest only keeping one Pueblan milksnake per enclosure. Now, Pueblan milksnakes tend to be very good eaters. They don't go off of food for long periods of time like other snakes do, such as ball pythons. So a healthy milksnake should eat for you quite often. So to start off with, for a baby Pueblan milksnake, you'll go from your typical pinkies to your fuzzies, and then to your hoppers, and then into your adult mice. Pueblan milksnakes don't necessarily have a problem with frozen thaw. If you can get your Pueblan milksnake to eat frozen thaw, it's actually the safest way, so that way your pet doesn't get hurt by a mouse that's trying to defend itself and trying to fend off the snake. These guys should be fed a meal no bigger than twice the girth of the actual snake, and these guys normally eat for you about once a week. It's not one of those snakes that eats a very big meal just once a month or once every 3 weeks or something like that. These guys like to eat quite often, which is pretty typical of a lot of small colubrids. But with that being said, these guys are going to entertain you a lot, and you can always look forward to feeding these guys and actually watching them eat in front of you. Now, these guys can be quite shy, and that's going to be the next topic that I want to talk to you guys about: handling. So Pueblan milksnakes are actually a very flighty snake because they are a snake that burrows a lot. So Pueblan milksnakes being a snake that you can typically find under logs and stones in the wild, this animal is quite the recluse. These animals are quite a bit flighty compared to other snakes. However, as you can see, she doesn't want me to mess with her right now. But given a little time and given persistent taming, as far as just introducing yourself to the animal and make sure the animal's seeing you in a positive way without scaring it, picking it up the wrong way, or harming it, these animals can tame down quite a bit to the point where they do become handleable. Now, as you guys have seen earlier in my introduction, these guys don't necessarily like to sit still like your typical constrictor or like a ball python will. These guys love to just move and move and move. So if you're looking for an active snake, a snake that's going to entertain you not only by being able to hold it but also to watch it, that's an awesome thing about these guys, is that they're so active. But if you want a snake that's going to sit there quietly while you watch a movie, this might not necessarily be the snake for you, because these guys do tend to move around quite a lot, and if frightened, these guys can dart, and they are escape artists. These guys are small, they can easily fit through a crack or get into a hole in the wall, and then they can be in a very, very dangerous spot. So just keep in mind, if you want a Pueblan milksnake, you want to make sure these animals are in an enclosure that's very secure. To my next point. Now guys, this is a typical Glasszilla enclosure, and one thing that I like about this enclosure is that it has this cool little sliding screen top right here, where when I push it, it actually closes completely on the sides where the snake can't get out. Now, old school glass enclosures had your typical screen top on the top, where a snake could easily knock that screen top off and crawl away, and you would have to use these little metal clips in order to hold it down. But now, commonly in the reptile community, you'll find enclosures like this, or you can even use an enclosure that has a front opening door like this here for a Pueblan milksnake, where the animal can't escape. The main thing is keeping the animal safe inside of the enclosure, and this gal over here just finished her mouse, so I'm gonna grab her before she slinks off. Hey, where do you think you're going? So you're swallowing that, you're going back in the enclosure, Missy. So this gal's back in her enclosure here in this nice warm spot where she's gonna digest that wonderful meal she just had and take it down for the rest of the night. So I hope you guys like this video, and I hope you guys really like this care guide. Let me know how you guys liked it in the comments section, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, if you guys ever want to talk to me or have any questions, hit me up on the Instagram. The Instagram is scales_13. Everybody have a great day. Peace.